This is Dr. Boff, and let's play some Kerbal Space Program. So, my plan is to run a return mission to Duna. That's going to take many launches and many mess-ups, but I want to start just by reminding myself how to play the game, since it's been a while, and by setting up some groundwork. So I have this satellite. It's going to do two things. It's going to be a communications satellite in orbit around Duna, and it's going to give me the ability to survey the planet, which will be really important to find fuel that I can harvest in situ to power my return vehicle. Some might say that it would be better to do two satellites than one ridiculously complicated one, but I don't know if I buy that. So the nuclear engine is going to be doing most of the heavy lifting through the transfer burn and the arrival burn. And then I've got some boosters. So I'm trying to do all this without Kerbal Engineer. And what I've been doing is I've been using the kind of vanilla in-game tools to size my boosters correctly. So if you look at the bottom right corner, there is a little engineering display that comes with the game. And that tells me the mass of the spacecraft in tons. Presumably those are metric tons, so 1,000 kilograms. For each kilogram, I need 10 newtons minimum in order to lift off the surface of Earth. So that means I need to take that mass number, multiply it by 10, and that should give me the thrust needed in kilonewtons. Then what I do is I size the engines such that they have more than that many kilonewtons. And I try to get to kind of as close as I can to that number without going under. You don't really get extra points for having too much thrust. In fact, as you burn through your fuel, the amount of thrust you have will equal more acceleration as there's less mass to move. So really you want to try and get each stage to have just the right amount of thrust to move the mass that's attached to it. The other thing I've got going on is I'm going to be making use of some asparagus staging. So you can see I've got some fuel lines here. Those are very carefully set up. So when I first launch, all 5 of these engines are going to be firing. But the way the fuel lines are plumbed, only 2 of these tanks will be draining, 2 of the orange tanks. So one set of 2 orange tanks is plumbed to drain fuel into the other orange tanks and into the center, meaning that all 5 engines are just running off of those 2 external tanks at first. Then once those tanks are drained, I can lose those 2 engines. Then the 3 remaining engines are being powered by the remaining 2 orange tanks. And once those fall off, then I have the central tank powering the central engine, and I should have depleted none of the fuel in that central tank. So this basically saves me launch mass because it kind of reduces the amount of engine I need. That late booster engine in the center is pulling its weight all the way up through the first 2 stages as well. Okay, you may or may not have seen the first launch. I need to turn on SAS a little bit better.
boosters away and still accelerating, meaning I did end up sizing all my engines correctly, which is great news. Alright, going pretty well so far. I've got my overly complicated satellite in all of its majesty. Get into prograde to stabilize the orbit, and since I have a tiny reaction wheel up top, I've got to burn a little fuel just to rotate in the right direction. I have other communication satellites up here, but I guess none of them feel like talking to me? That's odd. Oh, there we are. Okay, yeah, I do have my ComNet visualization going. Alright, nice stable orbit. Let's check our fuel remaining. Not too bad. Yeah, actually I'm pretty happy with that. The nuclear engine's got to do all of the work for the transfer stage, but they are really efficient, so I feel like we're going to be fine. Incidentally, I'm going to be avoiding ion engines at any point during any of these missions because I just can't be bothered waiting the 10 hours of burn time. Alright, time for the transfer burn, which we burned through this booster stage pretty quick when we switched to the nuclear engine. Still a fairly decent amount of acceleration from that nuclear engine, and ridiculous fuel efficiency. I'm pretty happy with that. Still gonna take a minute, so I think I'll start this and come back to you when we're in our transfer orbit. Alright, here we are with our big satellite in our transfer orbit over to Mars. Let's take a look at that. Alright, this is going to be our encounter with Duna. Let's see how much maneuvering we need to do when we arrive. Pretty reasonable. My kind of transfer maneuvers, I kind of thought really carefully about that, and I avoided slowing down and just instead got myself closer to Duna's orbit, which meant I had to kind of looks like there's some extra time, but ended up saving me a lot of effort because now my encounter is at a pretty low relative velocity to Duna. Okay, I don't know what that purple line is. There we go. Now we have to do the thing we often do in Kerbal, which NASA typically does not need to do, which is go around a couple times until Mars is in the right spot. Okay, so Mars is ahead of us. So, in orbital mechanics logic, we need to slow down. We need to fire our engines away from Mars such that it can catch us up. Although that said, our orbit already has a shorter period than Mars's orbit, so it may be enough just to go around again, or I actually may need to do the opposite. Okay, looks like if I burn now to make my orbital period a little bit closer to Mars, and then do a little bit of a correction when I arrive back at my periaps, I should get an encounter next time around. I have a
especially
ton of
fuels.
burn. I might even be able to do something fancy like get caught by the moon and do a little flyby of the moon if I wanted to. I'll probably skip it. What I am going to do is put myself in a polar orbit, because I can't remember, but I think that survey thing needs a polar orbit. Alright, and we have a little bit of an adjustment burn, and we'll have an encounter. circularizing my orbit here. Pretty happy with that. I've still got tons of fuel left for the nuclear engine, but I think it's time to let go of it and turn on my survey scanner, see if I'm in the right sort of orbit. Well, that was needlessly dramatic. And there we are. I've got a communications satellite in orbit around Mars, and I've got some good survey data to find fuel, which I will inevitably need to do for my return mission. Alright, I think that's pretty good for today. I will see you all later.